Good evening and welcome to South Australia's Spotlight on Primary Produce. I'm Ben Clarke and our first story tonight is about the impacts of COVID-19 on the southern rock lobster fishery. We'll cross now to our reporter on the scene, Ben Clarke.
Thanks, Ben. Here in Robe, South Australia lies the heart of the southern rock lobster fishery and exporter Sky Seafoods. In recent years, both Sky Seafoods and local fishermen have enjoyed a relatively stable export market operating as a cooperative fishery. With the events of COVID-19, the industry was thrown into shutdown, exposing a business model reliant on exports. The southern zone fishery that supplies Sky Seafoods extends to the mouth of the River Murray to the Victorian border and accounts for over 1,200 tonnes of the total 9,500 tonnes of lobster harvested in Australia. The area is highly valued for its clean and green image, and the product is a highly sought after luxury item. It is worth over 100 million to the South Australian economy and employs over 1,000 people. The southern zone was first commercially fished in 1899, and in 1945 a group of 28 fishermen established the South Australian Fishermen's Cooperation, and a factory was built to process low-value frozen lobster tails for export to the American market.
Here you can see live rock lobster ready for export.
In 1997, Sky Seafoods was established selling live export lobsters into China, adding substantial value to the product. They currently sell 10% of the available quota, with many wholesalers competing for the product to export. The primary export market for southern rock lobster is China, with a small amount going to Malaysia, Singapore and Japan. There are 180 commercial licences with no more planned for allocation. A quota system has been established and is monitored closely based on sustainability of the fishery. This has remained constant for the last 8 years and has been considered sustainable long term. As you can see, China has a long history with Robe, with a memorial high fang behind me erected in honour of the 16,500 Chinese immigrants that landed here in 1857. Chinese export price varies based on demand for the product, which is driven by particular cultural and holiday events. Chinese New Year and May Day or Labour Day cause price spikes from the beach price average of $85 a kilo to over $110 per kilo. Weddings form demand for smaller 1 kilogram lobster, and banquets in Beijing demand the larger lobsters. Superstitions also play a role in product value, with bright red lobster preferred. It is also the Chinese national colour, which is symbolic in Chinese culture. In 2015, the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement was signed, and a tariff of 15% was gradually rolled back until January 2019, when the tariffs were eliminated. Whilst the tariffs were in place, lobsters were exported to Vietnam wholesalers, then imported to China from there to avoid the tariffs. But this would impact lobster mortality and quality. The market took a huge hit with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Paul Regnier, a local fisherman and president of the Robe Fishing Association, commented that I was in the middle of fishing and I got a phone call to say that they can't sell their lobsters anymore, and we had to stop until further notice. He also made comment that it virtually closed the industry down for over a month and a half with no flights and no demand at all. We couldn't sell our product. To compound the situation, the season had until the end of May to catch our allocation of lobster. With the export market closed for business, the domestic market had limited appetite for the product, as the average seafood consuming Australian cannot afford the elevated price of lobster. This left wholesalers and fishermen with the prospect of catching crayfish for $40 a kilo, which was not profitable for anyone involved. Domestic consumers would argue that it would be beneficial making Australian lobster affordable again. Most people in the industry had considered that the season was over, and anyone that had quota left to catch went to the local minister to lobby for the remaining catch quota to be rolled into the following season, as the resource was still available. Minister Tim Whetstone advocated for the quota rollover, which was approved, and any fishermen that had not met their quota as a result of the COVID-19 situation may add the amount to their following season starting in October. What was not expected was a sudden rise in demand at the end of April, which saw prices return to pre-COVID normality of $90 per kilo, and some export flights resume. The fishermen and wholesalers felt that this was due to the upcoming Chinese holiday May Day or Labor Day, and also due to weddings that had been delayed that were now taking place. The price remains solid, and many fishermen have been able to compete their seasons before the closure at the end of May. The industry is made up of multiple processors and exporters selling through various channels to essentially the same market. The strategy of sales can vary, with fishermen changing wholesalers for as much as $1 per kilo, and with the resource being limited causes competition to inflate prices beyond market value to compete for the product locally. The fishermen are united through cooperation and the associations that they are members of, and want the best price. But there is a disconnect between wholesalers and the fishermen, so the further development of the market in China and the rest of the world is doubtful until they can get control of their path to market by uniting the wholesalers' strategy to export. Southern Rock Lobster Limited is an association between New Zealand, Victorian, Tasmanian and South Australian fishermen. A strategy review is due in 2021, and local fishermen are planning for a way to manage risk and increase value of their product in the export market moving forward. A long-term barrier to trade in China, such as politically motivated tariffs or export restrictions, would see the industry brought to its knees, much like the COVID-19 pandemic has. Risk aversion measures such as forcing lower value domestic sales as part of their quota has been suggested to enable some trade to continue regardless of international events. Recommendations for a per kilogram tax to fund a collective marketing strategy for the industry has been considered to ensure that existing markets are well developed and new markets outside of the main are recognised and developed. The Southern Rock Lobster is a highly sought after product to the point of international reverence. Despite the COVID-19 restrictions and Australia's borders being closed to international travellers, live South Australian lobsters have still been making the 7,500 kilometre journey for Chinese consumers to enjoy, showing the true power of a top quality product in demand. Back to you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. Wow, what do I have to do to get that job? Spectacular. In news after the break, China and the tariffs on Australian barley. Is this the beginning of the end for free trade?